everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we've got an emergency job to do for a pal, and this will be my first collaboration video, I guess. This pretty little Ram Sport belongs to my friend Nick from The Real Guy Garage. Of course, we, as always, will put a link to his channel in the description box below. It was getting kind of tired, the engine. He's done a lot of work to this over the years. It's had a paint job and everything underneath has been redone. And the last thing really to do was the engine. It had a kind of a lazy cylinder, and that ended up being a worn camshaft. So he got all the parts and went to do it. At the same time, it needed an oil pan because the oil pan was rotted off, and blah, blah, blah. To make a long story short, we found out that one rod journal on the crankshaft was scored up. So that's it. She needs a crankshaft, and we need this truck on the road. So we got no time to be waiting for crankshafts to get ground or engines to be rebuilt. So here's what we're going to do for now. This here is a 360 Magnum, same as what's in that truck. It's been sitting in my garage or my barn for years. I'm not using it anytime too soon, so we're going to get this thing fixed up and get it thrown in that truck for now. So at least he's got his truck back and he could work on his engine as time allows, right? And we could swap it back, anytime. So this is a complete engine. We've got all the parts for it there, so we can put it all back together. We'll put a few new goodies in it, and we could stick it in there, and it should be okay. What I'm doing right now is getting the transmission separated off it. That truck is 4-wheel drive, and this, of course, is a 2-wheel drive transmission, and his transmission's freshly rebuilt anyway. Well, there it is. We got it on the stand. Now what I'm going to do first is just clean it up. There's a lot of loose stuff, and I don't want to start opening things up and have a bunch of crap fall inside. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll be back in a few minutes. I got wire brushes, a shop vac, and an air blower, and we'll get this thing all cleaned up. Got all the loose crap blown off it. Now it's time to start taking some stuff apart. We're going to pull the front cover off so we can have a look at the timing chain. We're going to put a new front seal in it, get that all sorted out. We're going to pull the valve covers off, reseal them. We've got some nice shiny ones to put on. We're going to pull the intake manifold off because there's a plate. There's a plate on the bottom of them that causes problems. It's just a piece of tin. We've got a billet plate to put on it. I took 2 pictures, one of this lining up with this bolt, and another of the rotor lining up, pointing right between those 2 rockers. So that'll we'll be able to put the distributor back in exactly in the right spot when we put this thing back together. So now I'll pull the distributor out and we'll get the intake off. Well, it smells like an old engine, but it's not all full of sludge or nothing. It's pretty decently clean inside. That's not bad at all. I did break one intake bolt, pretty common to break the ones on the front corners, very much like a Ford Windsor engine. But no problem, we'll be able to get that out. Alrighty, now we're going to get the front cover off this thing so we can have a look inside there. Our timing chain here has got some slop in it. But quite honestly, if you put a brand new one in and took this apart again in 10,000 kilometers, it'd look just like this. So it's got steel gears, and I'm not even going to worry about this. We're just going to close it up and call it good. After cleaning this thing up a little bit, the frost plugs are like mint. I'm not going to mess with them. They're good and solid. They're in there tight. They're not leaking. You can see here, like, there's no corrosion on the inside of this, and a lot of times they'll rot from the inside out when the antifreeze goes bad. Usually when you pull these core plugs out, you have to poke out all the crust and crud that's in there. There was nothing in this block. So yeah, we're just going to leave well enough alone. Sometimes the best thing with these things is to just not mess with them. All right, thanks to the miracle of Kubota Power and my trusty assistant Deb, we got the truck in the shop. Nick should be along in a bit. He is a shift employee, so his hours are a little different than the rest of ours, but it doesn't matter. The job is moving along. So what I got to do now, it's actually good that he's not around right now, because it's really hard to work when the place is like this. So I'm going to work on that. That's my project. The original plan was to just put this thing in and then put the intake on and dress it once it was in there. But I should have thought, it's a modern car. I'm used to these old things where it's got to go up and over the rad support. But no. This one here, the top of the rad support comes out. Much easier. So what we'll do is put in a dressed engine. So I put the intake on and got some of the stuff on the front of it. Just makes it a lot easier. That'll make it a lot easier. And it took me like 5 minutes to take all that apart. Thankfully, you can see here, this truck over the years has had a lot of rust spray applied to it. So I didn't have to fight with all the body bolts. A lot of times, stuff like this, you'll go to take it apart and all the bolts just break, right? This came apart like nothing, like butter. So that's good. Now we can go ahead. I got to crawl underneath, get the torque converter unbolted, get the bolts from around the bell housing, and then we can undo the motor mounts, a couple of wires, and this thing should just come right out. It says here anyway. If it's up hanging from the crane when I come back, then you know it was all good. Old one out. Lots of room in there, but half the engine is like under the cowl. Makes it a little tricky, but well, we manage. So here's the new one ready to go in. It needs to be kind of tilted to the back a little bit. We may have it tilted a little too much to the back, but that's better than not enough. We'll work with it. I stuck a couple of 3/8 studs in the back of the block, which will help line it up and guide it into the bell housing. And it's very important when you put it in to make sure that the wires for the crank sensor don't end up over like that and get squashed. That'll be bad. That'll ruin your day. All right, there she is, back on her mounts. We've got the first couple of bolts connecting the bell housing to the back of the engine, so we'll have to get back there and get there's 4 around the top. There's brackets and dipstick tubes and stuff that got to get all attached, but it's in. That's the main thing. Well, there we are. It's all done underneath, so I'm going to put it back on the ground and we'll start buttoning up the top. And now, wouldn't you know it, just as I get into the home stretch, the freaking power went out. Well, lucky it's daytime. In worst case, if I have a hard time seeing, I've got a couple up there. I've got those little LED tri-light things. They're both charged up, so now we should be okay. Power's back, thank goodness. Got the belt and the hoses on. Now I'm trying to find a throttle cable. It's in here somewhere, and I got to see if it's got cruise control, because there would be a cable for that too. And I got this pretty much buttoned up now. Waiting on Nick. He's going to come with fluids. We need some oil, antifreeze, and transmission fluid, because I had a little adventure last night. Somehow, while I was pulling the engine out, I managed to pull the transmission dipstick out too and made a big mess. So we're down a couple of quarts. Anyway, no biggie. We'll get that straightened out. And there's a few wires and stuff that are kind of the ground cables on these things are crap, and it looks like he's replaced them all. So I'll let him put them on the bolts where he had them before. I'm not going to mess with that. Okay, Nick is here. Say hi, Nick. Night shift Nick is here. Yeah, I remember those days. And look, it's just like the real world. When your own truck is dead, you get a rental truck, except it's not free. And he might get the 4th gen bug now. Well, we got some oil in it. And got the last few little wires hooked up. Now, big adventure. Here we go. No sparkies. Happy, happy. All right. All that's left to do now is see what happens. Well, here goes nothing. So far, not good. I never heard the fuel. Should I hear the fuel pump?
Yeah, it's cycling. I can hear it behind me.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe give it a couple of... Because all the gas came out of the rails, eh?
Yeah.
Well, if you can see back there, there's a wire that's gotten pulled out of the plug for the pickup coil. Well, I can't tell which. It's either the pickup coil or the crank sensor. We'll get in there and I guess figure it out. Yep, that'll do it. And look what you got to do to change it.
It's like from the racetrack.
Okay, crank sensor's changed. We're going to try it again. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hang on. Yeah, the fan's hitting the rad hose.
Is it?
Yeah, hang on. Oh! Rails are full of air. There she goes. All right, it's alive. Sounds pretty good too. Yeah? Well, there we go. That's a pretty good running engine. Now we'll shut it down and get the cooling system all put back together and tie up all the loose ends, and should be good to go. All right. Everything's all put back together now. We're just going to let it warm up for a sec. Make sure the coolant level stabilizes. And we have to check the transmission oil. Make sure that's topped up. But this thing's really running good now. Like, good. Let's go listen to it. That's a good sound in 360. Okay, here she goes. It's a good looking truck. So I took it out for a spin and it's all good. The only thing that happened was it got a bit of an airlock in the top end of the motor. So we're just letting it completely emptied the overflow jug here. So that's good. That means our rad cap and everything is working good. So we're just letting it cool off and then we'll top everything up again and it should be good. All right, we got the cooling system fixed up again. That thing takes 5 gallons of coolant. That's more than that thing takes. Unreal. So he's gonna go give it another heat cycle and we'll double check it when he comes back. So she keeps tossing her cookies. It starts out and it runs fine for a few minutes, and all of a sudden it overheats and it pushes all the coolant out into the jug. So it's a brand new thermostat in this thing, right? We're gonna have a look at that and kind of wonder if the thermostat is sticking or not opening, right? It's the easiest thing to do right now. We don't see antifreeze in the exhaust. We don't see it going in the oil pan. There's not really any indication of it being a cylinder head issue. Like I know this engine was a good engine. So I'm ruling out that stuff for now. So we're going to go with the easiest thing first. And once it cools off, we're going to pull the thermostat out. So what we perceived as the engine having air pockets in it, the first couple of times it was believable, but after the fourth time we started saying, no, there's something wrong here. You know, so we got into it, and what do you know? Brand new thermostat. This is a brand new thermostat, and it doesn't open. Man, the land of almost fits strikes again. That could have, you know, it could have cost the guy an engine, right? Man, everything you buy now is junk. So anyway, we got this one here. We tested it, and it actually opens. So we're going to swap this one in, and we should be okay. Wow. It's at the end of it all, I mean, if we're going to have a defective part, it's better to have that defective than something like inside the engine. You know what I mean? Even on this, you have to move a couple of things out of the way to get at it, but it wasn't that bad. So we'll get this fixed up, and we should be good to go. Well, we got our new thermostat installed, and what I did was I drilled a hole in it so we won't get any airlocks. And what I'm going to do, I got to get that heater hose put back on, and then I'm going to slowly start filling up the cooling system until I see the coolant start to rise up in here, and then we'll just let it sit and make sure it's not going to leak down in there, because that's not something you want to deal with. Just like that. And we'll let her sit like that for a spell and make sure that there's a little low spot around it, the thermostat housing on the intake manifold. So if it leaks, we'll see it down there. We'll leave it like that for a little bit. Then we'll put the hose back on and finish filling her up. Everything's back together. The cooling system and the expansion tank are full here. Don't see anything. Well, that's from yesterday, but no new drips. Don't see any oil or transmission fluid. That's also good. So we're going to crank it up now and just let it sit here and idle and see if it warms up. Get the thermostat open and make sure everything's good. All right, well, we'll let her run for a bit and see what happens. We'll keep an eye on the temperature gauge and feel this hose for when the thermostat's going to open. All the while, keeping our eyes peeled down there for any leaks. Looks good so far, doesn't it? That is a nice running engine. I have to say that. There's a tiny little bit of warmth I could start feeling right here, and that's because there's kind of a low spot in the hose there. And remember, we drilled a little hole in the thermostat to help it bleed. So it's still going to be, even though the thermostat's closed, it's going to be pushing a tiny bit of warm water up through, so that you can feel there. But when the thermostat does open, you'll feel it. This hose will get warm. It's not pushing anything into the overflow. That's good too. So far so good. This hose is starting to get a little warm with the water from the bleed going through it, and it's starting to build up a little bit of pressure. Let's go have a look at the gauge. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, it's slowly coming up. That's good. We got to get it right up to 100. That's 100 Canadian degrees for those of you who might be a little confused looking at that. 100 is the equivalent of 212 in Fahrenheit. Needs a little help getting a little warmer. I think we're okay now because it's been running for about 15 minutes. And I guess the thermostat is opening just a tiny bit or whatever. It's getting to be, I'm checking on the, where's my thingy here? Checking on the hose here. And we're getting around 160. So that's not bad. We'll let it run like this for a few minutes and see if the gauge comes up. Because that there is pretty much where it's been sitting this whole time. And by now, it's been running long enough. If the thermostat was stuck closed like the first one was, it would have tossed its cookies for sure. Alrighty, that's good. I'm going to pull the cardboard out now, and the gauge should go back down. Good. The gauge is going back down. I'd say our cooling system is functioning properly now. It didn't push any coolant out into the overflow jug, so that's another good sign. We're going to let it sit now and cool off. I'll come back later and adjust the level in here because it might pull a little bit out. We'll see. But aside from that, I'd say we're good. Well, she's cooling off nicely and everything here is looking good. It's not pulling a bunch of coolant back from the reservoir, so yeah, this is awesome. We're all set. So at the end of it all, aside from two silly things, this job went pretty smoothly. This here, like, it doesn't have the green fuzz or anything on it, so I don't think that rotted off. I guess just somehow when I was putting it together, it managed to get pulled out. What are you going to do? Poo-poo happens, right? I'm still stewing over this. This was brand new, this part. It came out of the box and went in the engine. And it was bought at a reputable parts place. It was a brand name part. And it doesn't work. It never even worked once. You know? It's very sad. I guess we're at the point now with all this junk that we're forced to buy that anything that you could possibly test before you install it, test it. Especially if it's something, you know, like this was a bit of a job to get at this thing. Not as big as a job as some of them are, but, you know, big enough. We had to move the alternator out of the way, take the belt off, drain the cooling system. You know, it involved some time. I can't imagine dealing with all of this stuff if this was an actual, you know, an actual business here that we were trying to make money repairing people's vehicles. This stuff would drive you crazy. And I watch enough guys that do that on YouTube to know that they are very frustrated with the quality of parts that they're having to install on customers' cars, to the point where a lot of them have just completely refused to use any aftermarket parts and only use OEM. You know, pretty sad. Anyway, what are you going to do? Got to play the hand you're dealt. So, giving this thing a clean bill of health now, it can go home and resume its Ram duties. Nick is lost without his truck. He loves this thing. So, that'll wrap this one up. Oh, there goes my neighbor. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Claremont Classic Garage. I hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, I'm Kevin, saying so long for now.